starting in January of 2025, I started making a video every single week, and with that, sewing a whole lot, trying to really make clothes, learn new things, try new styles and new materials, and figure out like what is really needed, and all of that good stuff. So this year I primarily made gifts, accessories, clothes, and costumes. So with that, I learned a lot. I don't know exactly how many projects I did. I should probably count that up. But it was a lot of projects, and I learned a lot from each and every one of them, which is why I love sewing and making my own clothes and just crafting in general. I'm always learning something, and everything I learn always like adds to this wealth of knowledge. Everything relates back to each other, and that is what is so exciting about all of this, making, zero wasting, all of that good stuff. So to kind of recap my year, I thought that we would talk about some very important things that I learned this year. And if you are just finishing up your first year of sewing, or you're just about to start sewing, hopefully these things will be either relatable to you or will be helpful along your way, as kind of a little bit of a leg up based on my experiences. So don't need to make the same mistakes that I made, and also can find some successes in the successes that I found and maybe stumbled upon for myself. The first thing that I want to know is that sketching was a huge help to me this year. It helped in the creative process. It helped with putting colors and textures together a little bit. Not that I'm a very good drawer or sketcher. And it just helped me to like get excited about a project and kind of get the creative juices flowing before making something. So it helped me kind of figure out some of those details, channel the inspiration that I found into something that is very much unique and me. So I use sketching both as a tool for like figuring out outfits and styling with clothes that I already had, and then also figuring out what clothes I wanted to make. And I thought putting those two together was really important for me. So thinking of a thing that I wanted to make, dreaming it up, and then thinking of what in my wardrobe will it go with and how can I kind of style it around that. Just so much drawing this year. I don't know that I got any better. Hopefully I didn't get any worse. This is something that I definitely want to continue exploring this year in 2026, and getting a little better at it so that I can, again, like be even more creative, add more details, and then also just like enjoy sketching as a fun activity. Yeah, I felt like it gave me the inspiration, and as somebody who has like a lot of decision paralysis and takes a lot of extra steps to get into something, it was nice to have this as like something that I could do a little more passively before I'm really ready to design and cut and sew, but also still like priming my brain and getting into that mental mode, which I don't know, maybe that's just me. That's something that really helped me a lot. So I loved sketching this year, especially for like upcycling clothes as well. I think that sketching helped a lot with that as well, because of course it's an item that you already own. It's already in a shape, in a style, and figuring out how it will look when you switch it up a little bit. I think that sketching really helps with that. So that was a really big point. But hopefully the other ones will be a little shorter. So let's get into some rapid fire little tips and things that I learned. Okay, I think if you're here, you probably already know this, but I just need to say it out loud. Seam allowance is important. I always use it, but I just kind of ignore like the 1/4 versus 5/8, centimeters versus inches. I just kind of don't do that. So I'll say it here. I'm sure you already know it. Seam allowance is very important. I'm going to try to remember that this year and take the extra second to be sure about my seam allowance. Another good quick tip, hand sewing is not as bad as it seems. I always make it up to be such a big thing in my head. I always leave it to the very end, and I always assume that it's going to take a lot longer than it really needs to. So it's really not that challenging, and it really doesn't take all that long, and it is a little bit relaxing too. So stop being afraid of hand sewing. So some times when that was handy, like ladder stitching, when you turn something out and you need to close it. Ladder stitching, I did that a lot this year. Super easy, super quick. Blanket stitching around things. I did that once for a Christmas present that I made a couple weeks ago, and it was very fun. It did take a little longer than I expected, but it was very fun to do and easy. And then of course, just like sewing on buttons and things like that. So hand sewing, not so bad. Just do it. Ooh, this was a big one that I figured out this year, and that is secondhand craft stores exist. Joann's obviously went out of business this year. Everyone was very sad about it. I didn't do a ton of shopping at Joann's anyway, just for specific things, but I realized, which I should have known long before, that my town has multiple secondhand craft stores, and normally I would just go to Goodwill and hope for the best, but they, you know, it's not always great in the craft section there. But these secondhand craft stores around me, they are all nonprofits, which is even better. So supporting the community, one of them at least is a nonprofit for like feeding the community. So it doesn't really get much better than that. So some awesome things that I found at the secondhand craft store this year, this amazing fabric that I used for my rodeo outfit, which we'll talk more about later. That was just amazing. I got it for I think $2, and it's a ton of fabric. I think it was over 2 yards, so pretty good. I also found a really nice liner for some pants that I made this year, my very first pair of pants, and the fabric that I chose for them was very scratchy and not great. We'll talk about that a little bit later too, but the liner that I chose was amazing and so soft and felt so good on my legs, and it was my first time doing a liner. Very nice. My secondhand craft store has like a whole liner section and tons of colors to choose from, so I thought that that was a win there. Also finding yarn. Yarn, as we know, is very, very expensive. It's just keeps getting more expensive. People are like buying sweaters at Goodwill to get yarn. I haven't done that yet. I've scoped it out. I haven't had success finding a sweater that I'd like to make into yarn yet, but getting yarn at the secondhand craft store, very cheap, very nice. And then the last thing that was a real win was getting some holiday themed fabric this year so that I could make a couple of holiday accessories. Yeah, nice and cheap. And they have tons of swatches of just like quilting cotton. So check out your local secondhand craft store. I bet there is one not that far from you. You might be surprised. So I think that's a kind of a good segue to go into the next thing that I learned, which I think was a very important thing for me and kind of something that I already knew, but anyway, let's just get into it. And that is that fabric matters. Fabric makes a difference in your garment. And like, this is obvious, but up until this last few projects, I was using pretty much upcycled things like tablecloths and curtains and things like that. Also just like quilting cotton. So all those things are kind of rigid. They don't, I guess the word I'm looking for is drape. So the drape is different on something like that, like something cotton that's meant to be like a tablecloth or meant to be for quilting versus something that's meant to like drape on your body beautifully. Obviously, this is obvious, but for where I was in my sewing journey, I was still using kind of these rougher, simpler fabrics. I think that it was just easier to, you know, learn on and to sew on. It was a little more forgiving perhaps in some ways. And I knew that it was affecting my projects, but not just how much. So when I got to my rodeo project, not that long ago, maybe a month or two ago, and I made the vest and I upcycled some pants with that fabric that I bought at the secondhand craft store for $2 for like over 2 yards. Amazing. When I used that fabric and it turned out just so amazing, I realized that the fabric made such a difference. It made it feel so luxurious. It made it feel like I was really like a fashion designer. So something just to note, fabric matters. And beyond that, figuring out what feels good on your skin. So not just like the drape and how it works with the pattern that you've got, but also how it feels on your skin. Everybody has a different tolerance for stuff that's on their skin. And then the last thing with fabric matters is using liners. So certain things require liners or are better with liners, like those pants that I made. The outside fabric was very scratchy and also woven and just not good to work with. So like, again, fabric matters. Yeah. And then especially like stretchy things. So I haven't done much with stretchy things, but considering the amount of stretch that it has, like that is an important thing. And that's something that is hard to know when you're buying something from the secondhand. Buying something secondhand it won't tell you, you know, what the stretch is and like exactly what the fabric content is. So something to consider when thrifting fabrics for a specific pattern that needs something specific. Not that I've ever used a pattern before though. Okay. All right, this next one is another kind of obvious one, but taking it with a grain of salt, and that is that using proper equipment makes a difference. And that, again, take it with a grain of salt. It matters in certain things and not so much in other things. So things that I noticed that it did matter in, or using the proper needle for the kind of fabric that you're using. And most fabrics are fine with just the all-purpose needle, but using it for denim, and what else did I use? Oh, and for leather, not so much. And especially just like really thick things. I broke several needles this year and bent at least 3 or 4. I also lost one just dropping it down into the thing, but I think it was already broken. So yeah, using the proper needle, that's a good one. Other proper equipment, I mentioned that I was sewing some leather. So I didn't have the proper equipment for working with leather. I was just kind of, going off the spot because I was making stuff for a Renaissance outfit, and I went to the secondhand craft store and they had this box of little leather swatches, and I was like, that would be really cool. So I hand stitched and used my sewing machine for the leather, but it was painful. And in the future, it would be helpful to have the tool that you use to make holes in it. So I think there's a couple of different tools that you can use to make the holes in the leather. I think that would be pretty key. Another thing that would be very convenient to have, I think, is one of those turning tools that you use, that you stick inside of the tube to pull it back out. After this year, I've decided to just not make tubes like that anymore. And if I'm going to make a thin like strap or something, just to do the fold and sew it, instead of doing the turnout, because it was just so tedious. My fingers get like so sore. I won't do it again unless I have the tool, and I don't plan to buy it. So unless it falls in my lap, we will just be doing the other method for now. Oh, and then the last proper equipment thing that I did get this year and that made me very happy is little clippies instead of pins. And I don't have enough to use just the clips and not pins at all, but it has been kind of a game changer to have the little clippies. I got them right here. And again, got these at my secondhand craft store, a bag of 10 for I think it was like $2. Oh my gosh, I love these things. They're not great for everything, but for most things, so convenient. Love that. I did also want to, on the other side, say that not all things require proper equipment. So for example, I mentioned the tube turner. Instead, I'm just going to use a different method. So I don't really need that tool if I use the other method. And then another one was I made a corset this year for my pirate costume. And instead of ribbing, I used zip ties that I just had them already. So it was convenient and that worked fine. So in that way, there are a lot of things that you can improvise. So pick and choose, some things it's very helpful to have the proper equipment if you can get it. Sometimes it's okay to use other methods as well. Okay, just 2 more things in this category of things that I learned and that I hope will help you in the future this year. The next one is it's hard to make things for somebody else when it comes to just fitting. Of course, when I make something for myself, I try it on a million times the whole time. I make a twirl and I try it on every time I add something. So obviously that's hard to do when you're making something for someone else. So sometimes have to make something that is a little more forgiving, has a little more extra room, or coordinate with that person and get them to try it on in the stages. So the sizing, and then also the fabric. So like I said, different people have different tolerances for fabric on their skin. I'm pretty sensitive. It depends on the person. And then with that, style. So everybody has a different style and it's not necessarily mine, which is why I often don't make pretty involved things for my friends and family. I make things that are a little more simple, like aprons, where they aren't wearing it for style. Because again, it's hard to know someone's style. But some things that I did make for other people this year, I made Karis the pirate vest for the Renaissance outfit, and I think that came out really well. Luckily, I just used a couple of vests that he already had to kind of make the shape of the shoulders and the armholes and the neck, and then I made my own pattern for the rest. So in that way, if you are making for somebody else, it is very helpful to have something that they already own that is similar for sizing. I think that that's probably the best way to do it. And then I made some aprons for my loved ones. I made a harvest apron for my friend. And the challenge with that is just that, again, everybody is a different size and aprons are usually a little more forgiving, but with the harvest apron, it goes just around your waist, and trying to just judge how much is needed. Don't want to go overboard, don't want to go underboard. Luckily, she's pretty similar in size to me. So making for other people is difficult, and that is something that I want to do more of in this new year, just making 2 other sizes and exploring that. Yeah. All right, I think that's pretty much all of the things that I wanted to talk about that I learned, things that hopefully will help you if you're embarking on your first year of sewing your clothes, or if you have just finished your first year, or somewhere in between, or somewhere farther along. Just some thoughts. Let me know if I missed any for you that you learned in your first year, or that you are learning right now. Next, I wanted to get into just some things that I noticed about myself in this year as a result of all these things that I've learned and all that, and just like the perspective that comes from making your own clothes. Okay, so the first thing that I noticed was when I use a theme that makes me feel a lot more creative. And it's so funny that putting boundaries on a thing makes the creativity easier. It's so funny. Putting boundaries on something releases something, makes me let go. Have you noticed that as well, or is that just me? I don't know. So some themes that I used this year. The first one was my strawberry themed outfit. I just all of a sudden one day, it was June and the strawberries were out and I was feeling it, and I decided I had some fabrics that had strawberries on them that I wanted to make something up with, and I just ran with it. I just said, strawberries is the theme, let's go. And I came up with a really cool sketch, a couple of really cool sketches. And I went for it and I made a whole cute strawberry outfit, which I'm sure you can find somewhere around here. And I just found that like putting that theme on it made me go so much further in the theme with creative things that I wouldn't have thought of otherwise. The next big theme was, of course, the Renaissance Fair, and it was Pirate Weekend. So there like 2 themes there that kind of went really deep. And again, like so much fun, especially with the accessories, like just trying to get so creative with that. Again, started with a sketch, a couple of sketches, some really cool fabrics that I had already had. So I didn't buy anything new for any of these things. It was all stuff that I already had that I was like, I've got a theme and I've got some fabric that already works with it. So let's go. And that was very cool. Again, was very fun, very creative, and it pushed me to learn new things because I made a corset, which I literally never would have done. So I learned how to use grommets, I learned how to do ribbing, and I did try some darts. And then the last big theme thing that I did was my cowgirl outfit, which I've already talked about with that amazing fabric that I already had. And again, just kind of pushed myself to make something that I wouldn't have made without that theme, but ended up being like a really fun addition to my wardrobe. And again, like really went with the theme, went hard with like the colors matching and all of that. So when in doubt, a theme really is inspiring to me. It made me very creative, and I think that that was a success. The second thing that I noticed throughout this year of making my own clothes is that I was paying attention to the clothes that I already had a lot more, and clothes in wherever I went, like people wearing clothes when I went to a store. Obviously I always paid attention to clothes or I wouldn't be here doing this, but the way that I look at them, looking at the structures and the seams and figuring out like how many panels are in those pants. Geez, like who came up with this style and how can I make that without making so many panels, right? But just like recognizing, especially in my own clothes, and again, like seeing clothes on people that I really enjoyed, and like thinking a little deeper into what was exciting about it, and what was like the extra touch that was put into that item that makes it feel more, I don't know, structured, stylish, whatever. So yeah, I think that that is a cool kind of effect, just being more mindful of my clothes. And then I really cannot stop coughing. Like, I don't know what's going on here. My throat is closing. But the show must go on. Wow. Okay, beyond that, and maybe as partly a result of that, is that just paying attention to the clothes that I do wear and styling them. I think that my personal style has grown so much this year, and not that I've made so many items in my wardrobe to change my style, but just like paying attention more to patterns and colors and what I really do love and what I don't love as much. I think a lot of us are in, especially thrifters and zero wasters, are in kind of a transitional period, maybe kind of towards the end of it for me, but like in a transitional period of like growing up, just going to the mall and getting, you know, what everybody else was wearing, what was fed to me. And then obviously when you go thrifting, it's a whole different thing. You have to really figure out what it is that you like and what your style is. And so I think this was just like another stepping stone of that. Now that I'm making my own clothes, realizing more about what I like and what I look for and what really is like quality to me. Okay, here I thought we'd just talk about like some new things that I tried this year. A lot of them were like included in what we talked about already, but as much for me as it is for you, just kind of documenting what I learned this year and things I checked off. So new things, I worked with leather, I did some quilting, I did some binding, I made pants for the first time, I made a top for the first time, I made a collar and a bag, I made a wallet and an apron. I made a lot of aprons. and a vest and a jumpsuit. So like so many new things that I made. And then something that was not new that I made before, but I think I'm starting to perfect is vests. So I've made several vests. It's really cool to like start new things and try things that I've never done before, but it's also very cool to try things that I've done before, that I have done before, and see the progress and like get a new thing each time, so that someday I'll get to like these perfect things and maybe I'll become a pattern maker, who knows. But anyway, the very last vest that I made was definitely the best I've ever made, and that was awesome. Also important to include the flops here, like let's be honest, not everything is perfect. Truthfully this year, I mean, I don't think there were a ton of things that were like total flops, because everything that I made, I just tried to keep going and to finish it in some way, especially because of this channel, because of you, because I wanted to have a finished result, and also because it's a good challenge. Like even if things go awry, you just keep going, chug along, make it happen. So the biggest actual flop that I had this year was making a groovy sleeved top for Karis. So I was gonna make it for his birthday, and I self-drafted the pattern based on some clothes he had, and it would have been my first time making sleeves, and that is where it went wrong, was the sleeves. The general shape of like the front and the back was fine, it's just like a vest, but when it got to the sleeves, something went wrong. And it was like a day before his birthday, and my sewing machine stopped working, and we were about to go to Italy, and it was just a whole cocktail of things that went awry. So my flop this year was Karis's top. So in 2026, making something with sleeves, anything with sleeves, that is on my bingo board for sure. I think that's something that I just need to use a pattern for, and I also haven't used a pattern yet, despite talking about it at length in my fall sewing plans video. I never got around to it. Lots of excuses. We moved, you know, it was a big thing, but yeah. So 2026, making a pattern, or using a pattern to make a sleeved item. Big on my list. Hopefully first. A couple other like kind of flops. I made some really ugly pouches this year. I made a video, but they were so bad that I just didn't finish editing the video. It was too much work, and it was not going to go anywhere. So some travel pouches, we still use them. They're still functional. They're just ugly. They're not great. It's whatever. The jumpsuit that I made, I rescued it from last year when I failed before, and I came back and tried again, and it got a lot better. Very, very close to good, but it really just needs some like different shaping. And again, this comes back to fabric matters. The fabric that I used was just quilting cotton, and so it doesn't have any drape at all. So on the top, it just, something is still a little bit off, but I did wear it a couple times. I still like it how it is. Eventually I'll fix it. So not really a flop, just something that could have been better. And then the corset that I made, I used darts on it for the boob part, and again, a quilting cotton has no forgivingness. Should have just left it flat, It's just slightly off. Like they're close to where they should be, but they're just slightly off, and it kind of bothers me, but that's fine. And then the last thing was the quilted vest that I made this year. It came out wonderful. I love it, but the binding that I used was just too thin. So I have been on the lookout to find that same color binding in a thicker binding. I guess I didn't realize like all the folding that goes into binding. So perhaps I'll find some other binding, but for now it works. It just was very tedious, and there's a couple of tiny spots where it does kind of go off the fabric, but it's fine. You won't even see it. Nobody noticed. All right, so just some minor flops this year, nothing big. Okay, and I've already kind of mentioned a couple of things, but let's just talk about my goals for 2026. Actually, before we get into this, let's go over my bingo board, because we have to close out 2025 before we get to 2026, right? All right, let's do the bingo board. So here is my bingo board for 2025. And I did get bingo. I was actually looking at it, and I was worried that I didn't actually complete bingo, even though I completed a lot of things on here, but I did. I got bingo. So I'll just share the things that I got bingo from. So I've got a diagonal bingo for sewing a zipper. I did that a couple of times. Sewing a gather, I did that a few times, went pretty well. Bingo, of course. Sewing binding, we talked about that. It's okay, I still learned how to do it. And making a turtleneck. So those were some cool fun things that I did this year. Some other things, quilting, making a collar, sewing linen, doing a hem, cleaning my machine. That was a fun one. I did make a video, but nobody watched it. It's still there if you want to check it out. And I think that's it. So 15, I did 15 of the things on my bingo board. That is pretty good for out of 25, not too bad. Literally didn't decide what my prize was gonna be. For a whole year, I forgot to do that. I was thinking about like just taking one of the gift cards that I got for Christmas and using that to buy some actually nice fabric. That might be a fun thing. Maybe that's a good reward for my hard work. Okay, so now let's talk about 2026. Okay, so for 2026, I don't want to put a ton of goals on myself. I don't want to stress myself out. I just want to be a little more creative. I want to continue trying the things that I've been trying, kind of perfecting things. I don't need to try a ton of new things, you know, just kind of getting better at the things that I've already done. And I also want to be slower and more intentional about my crafting. So stay tuned for a little video about my slow crafting journey for 2026. That is like a kind of a challenge that I'm going to do this year. So if that sounds fun to you, kind of slowing down, doing crafts more enjoyably, giving yourself more time to finish those crafts instead of like always on a time crunch. And yeah, just enjoying the process, learning a little more about the process in different crafts, not just sewing, but some other kinds of crafts as well. If that sounds fun to you, stick around, hit the bell to be notified when my next video comes out, and hopefully that will be the one. So the goals that I do have for this year, I will make a bingo board, but I'm not going to do 25 squares again. No, that's not necessary. I might make it 3x3 or 4x4. We're slowing down. We're just enjoying the ride. I think that while I did have fun making all these things and I felt a lot of reward from it, there were definitely a lot of times when I wasn't as present as I could have been, and I wasn't enjoying it as much as I should have been. So this year, that. But as far as like sewing goals, just in general, I want to, of course, try a pattern, especially one with sleeves. That would be great. And then as a general, just hope for myself this year is to just be more creative and add more details in my projects. And I think that exploring different kinds of crafts, different mediums and disciplines will kind of help me bring in more elements to my projects and have them be a little bit more creative, a little more expressive and fun, but also cohesive and multimedia. I think that that's kind of where I'm going this year. So I've been saving a lot on my Pinterest of just like details that I would love to add, you know, so going the extra mile. And like I talked about, like in the themes, when I had a theme, I did kind of do those extra steps and go those extra miles to drive home the theme. So kind of keeping that spirit alive with my creativity and the details that I make in my pieces this year. Wow. I feel like that's everything that I had to say. If you're still here, thank you so much for hanging out. Please give me a like, maybe a subscribe. It's been wonderful hanging out with you. Let me know if something that I said was helpful to you or if I left something out. Yeah, so much chatting, but I feel like gotta reflect and digest before diving headfirst into more goals and another year. So I hope that you had the most wonderful 2025. I hope you made all of the cool things that you wanted to make, and that you don't forget that there's always another year ahead. Yay! Good luck on your first craft of the year. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. I'm Christina, and I'll see you next time. Bye.